Hans Vrensen, you are Head of Research and Strategy at AEW Europe. Thank you for joining us on BiTV.
Thanks for having me, Lucie.
In the recent AEW monthly research report, it is stated that the share of office employees working sometime or usually from home has more than doubled over the last 2 years. How do you see this trend evolving in the coming months as we hopefully gradually emerge from the pandemic?
Well, that's a question that we've been researching to some extent. We try to put it into the historical context. So this doubling is really more the effect, of course, of the COVID-19 lockdowns. And so we have seen working from home evolve already in the past, before the COVID crisis hit us. In fact, it's our estimation that about 28% of office workers either sometimes or usually work from home. And of course, in the pandemic, that has gone up to maybe like 67 or 70% across Europe. We do expect that when the lockdowns are lifted, that percentage actually will come down again. Maybe not back to the historical levels. We do think that there will be more companies that will allow their employees to work more from home, in some cases even completely from home. But we don't think it will be stick at the levels that we saw during the lockdown. I think there's a lot of people that are keen to go back to the office, to have the interaction with their colleagues, with their clients, and also have a much more social experience when they do their work. So we do expect an elevated level of working from home going forward, but not at the same level as what we saw during the lockdowns.
And therefore, maybe the question that's on every investor's mind at the moment is what could be the long-term impact of this new paradigm on office space, demand and supply?
Well, that is exactly the thing that we try to do with the report, Lucie, is that we obviously want to place the demand side of this phenomenon, which in the end, it shaves off about 1% of the demand side. This increase in the working from home, we think it will reduce the demand for office space by about 1%. But of course, on the supply side, in some markets, we already have high vacancy levels, but actually, mostly across Europe, we were starting the crisis with very low vacancy levels. And of course, that means that there is a bit of resilience in the market. And that also the supply of new space is not always as elevated as you might think. Certainly with the new rules from the banks, it's very difficult to build speculative new office buildings. So the supply side actually was reasonably moderate. And that means in the balance of the supply and the demand, that actually the picture is not so dramatic. And that's why we think that even though we're not blind to the working from home phenomenon, we want to recognize it for what it is. There are offsetting factors in the markets that we see. And of course, each market has different levels of working from home. We think that the bigger cities will typically see, because the congestion and the travel time is much greater, so there's a bigger incentive to really let people work from home, perhaps a bit more. You don't want to be on the metro for an hour and a half, or in the case of London, 2 hours on the train. And that is a good incentive for both employers and employees to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be working 2 or 3 days from my house. I save some time on the commute. And where in smaller cities, the commute is much more reasonable. You will have maybe less incentive to have this working from home be increasing as much as in the bigger cities. So these are some things that we considered when we did the analysis.
Okay, and therefore, having said that, could some European markets reveal themselves to be more resilient than others in light of these new trends?
Yes, yes. So what comes out of the analysis, we looked at the data across 25 different office markets across Europe, of course, including France, Germany, most of the Western European markets. What comes out of the analysis is actually that smaller, more regional markets. Now we're still talking about cities like Marseille, Copenhagen. I mean, these are not small cities, but relative to Paris and London, they are obviously smaller in size. That these smaller markets we think will be more resilient in the future when the working from home trend continues. And so that is effectively our view. Now there are one or two exceptions, especially on the Central Eastern European markets, and that is because those markets are actually very well, a little bit less mature than the Western European markets, and that means that an impact of working from home is a bit bigger and more dramatic in those markets. They also have a bit of a bigger supply pipeline, so there's more new buildings coming through the pipe, and that means that the impact of a reduction in demand at the same time when the supply goes up, that is obviously not a good situation. But that's a separate sort of range of markets that we think will be impacted perhaps a little bit more, the Central Eastern European markets.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this insight. Thank you all for joining us. See you soon on BiTV.
Thank you.